Welcome back to Your Networth's Network. I'm your host, Corey McNabb, and this is a networking style podcast where we bring up special guests, learn about them, about their business, and just how we can all work together. My goal in life is to rise to a place of excellence, and I want to bring you with me. So, that being said, let's bring up our very special guest, a good friend of mine, Mr. TJ the Winner.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Corey.
No problem, brother. How you been?
I've been great, just doing the business, grinding, trying to meet people, trying to acquire properties, trying to help people in the process.
No. All right. Well, like I said, I know we have a little bit of a history. But why don't you give the audience a background on yourself?
Sure. My background is in engineering and robotics education. So I went to school to become a mechanical engineer. The whole time I was in college, I had a passion for STEM education and robotics and, increasing the number of students going into science, technology, engineering, and math. While in college, my sister got me Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I, became obsessed with real estate, and then bought my first home, and I house hacked. And then when I moved back to Birmingham, which is where I'm from, I turned my townhome into an Airbnb. That was January 1st, 2020, and then from there, we've scaled a lot, and so we went from one to about 40 properties under our management now in 2024.
Wow. Okay. And so you've got 40 properties under management. Are they all long term rentals? Are you doing that house hacking thing where you live in for a year and then move out?
Great question. So currently I live just in a house, no house hacking. But they're a mix of Airbnbs, short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, group homes, and then we're also doing just about to start doing some co-living.
Gotcha. Okay. So your Airbnbs, are they in like established vacation spots or are you just kind of
Mhm.
wherever it works?
Not at all. So our portfolio actually started in Auburn, which is where I'm from. So it's a SEC college town. There's lots of people coming through for various things. Football games is probably what people associate most with Auburn, but being a tier one university, there's all kinds of things going on all the time. And we really shifted a lot of our short-term rentals to mid-term rentals because we like them. They're easier to manage. And then really we're only doing short-term rentals during the fall, during football season. And even then we set like a 3 or 4 day minimum for game days. And so our short-term rentals are still longer term than most people's 1 or 2 day weekend rentals.
Gotcha. Okay. So what is it about midterm rentals that you like more than short term rentals?
The management aspect. So having one guest in there for an extended period of time, one, still cash flowing much higher than long term rent, and then two, they're just a lot easier crowd. So the people in the short term rentals, like there there's a higher risk of them being complainers. There's a higher risk of them damaging your property. There's a higher risk of them, just not treating your place well or giving you a bad review for the smallest thing. And then midterm renters, they're typically traveling professionals or people having worked on their house and insurance kind of cases. And they're a lot more lax. So like a small issue doesn't affect them because we have time to get out there and send somebody. Whereas like if you have kind of a maintenance issue that pops up randomly on a short-term stay, that's going to kill your review, even though it's something normal that happens. Like the dishwasher goes out, that's not anybody's fault. But if it happens on a short-term rental, they're upset about it. And it ruins their trip. If it happens in a mid-term rental, they're like, oh, that's fine. Whenever you can get your handyman out here to fix that, that's all right.
Okay. So, because I've heard a lot about midterm rentals, but I don't know enough about them other than like traveling nurses or
Mm-hmm.
airline pilots. Um,
So traveling nurses are actually a small percentage of them. They were a lot bigger during COVID. So that's actually how we got into midterm rentals. So we started January 2020 with our Airbnb. We had one. We had our learning process was the beginning. Our first few bookings, we learned a lot of lessons from that. And then right as we were getting our feet from under us, COVID hit, and then we had probably 12 to 18 bookings canceled, and we weren't allowed to book anybody else on Airbnb except for travel nurses who Airbnb was pushing. So we were like, let's get a travel nurse in there, let's pay the mortgage, and that's it. So we're kind of forcing some midterm rentals, but then we're like, this management's kind of easy. The bills are being paid. We should look more into this.
Hmm. Okay. I didn't realize that Airbnb was pushing for that.
Yeah,
Um,
right when everything was shut down, they canceled all of the bookings for everybody on the site, and then the only people they would allow is traveling medical professionals, and you had to provide proof, and then that's who they were pushing hosts to. They couldn't force us to get them a discount, but they were like highly encouraging us to make it work for the traveling nurses, even though at the time traveling nurses were getting paid higher more than they've ever been paid.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I know you because we've been on the wholesale team together, and you've been buying properties all the while. Are you buying them all by yourself? Are you partnering with people? How does your kind of um, method or structure work?
It's a great question. So I'll go back to the beginning. So we started. I bought my first home. It was a FHA townhome. So we bought that. When I moved back to Birmingham, I moved in with my now wife, and we were building our Airbnb business together. So the second property we bought actually ended up being on the same street, just because I loved that street in Auburn, and anytime one came available, I was trying to buy it. But not COVID. And now, if you saw a street or a for sale sign available on any townhome on my street, by the time you saw the sign, it was already too late. Like the house is already sold. They were basically putting the sign up just because they had to. But during COVID, everything slowed down. So we actually had the opportunity to buy another one. We saw a sign in the yard. It was a for sale by owner sign. We skip traced it. The number had actually washed off. So that was in our favor too. I found the number and actually found out it was a engineering buddy of mine who was selling it, and so that was my other end. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'll sell it to you," and we ended up buying that one. And we brought in a private money lender that was a close family friend who bought it as a second home loan, 10% down, and we got a great interest rate in May 2020. And so that was our second Airbnb. And then because money in 2020 was so cheap, like hard money loans were crazy. So November 2020, we bought our third property, and that was $100,000 property, 900 square foot house, and we were going to turn it into a midterm rental. And the loan product we used was a 10% down, 30-year interest rate with hard money, and it was 5% interest rate with hard money, and we only had to put 10K down on that. So that's kind of how we got started. Then we ran out of capital to keep buying properties. So we shifted to arbitrage. So now we had a couple Airbnbs under our belt and we had the experience. So now we started going after landlords who had long term properties for rent, and we wanted to rent from them with permission, explicit permission to Airbnb. A lot of people do it without explicit permission and they get in trouble. But our pitch was as an arbitrage tenant, we're going to take care of most maintenance issues. We're going to be having your property professionally cleaned. At any time, if you decide to change your mind, your house is show ready. And so, you can come stay in it, you come see it. And we're managing all the tough tenants. So you're getting your rent no matter what. And so the first couple people we started working with had never done short term rentals. They had been long term landlords for 10, 20 years each, and all of them basically did the same thing. They were like, you know, we'll try one. That sounds like a cool idea. And then almost very regularly at the 3 month mark, they're all like, this is incredible. Let me give you as many properties as I can. So that's year one, we went 1 to 3. Year two, we went from 3 to 8, all arbitrage. And those were only two landlords who just gave us more. Year three, we went from 8 to 13, and then that was 2022. And at the end of 2022 is when I quit my teaching job to go real estate full time. I joined Sub 2 in February 2023, and then kind of went all in. And since then, we've added 25 more properties. And then
Nice.
lately, the way we're adding properties is by partnering with other Sub 2 students. I'm really good at finding the deals. We're really good at making things cash flow. And then we find people who have capital and want to be in real estate, but not necessarily an active partner. And so it's been a really good mix of how we're acquiring our properties. But lately, it's pretty much all partnerships where the other person's bringing the capital and we're operating.
Okay. All right. So you had said something that first private money lender you had. It sounds like they didn't have the cash ready to go. They went and got a loan for it.
No, they had the cash. It was a
Oh,
private. It was
okay.
like it was a second home, so they only needed 10% down. Purchase price was like 230, so it was like 25K, maybe 35K to close all in. And they're on title with us, and so they're a high W2 earner, so they get to take tax credit or depreciation towards that, which helps them with their active income. And they were actually our private money lender on the third property as well, and same thing, because they're on the property, they get their tax burden is a lot less, and they really did it to help us. They weren't really believers in real estate, but then over the past couple of years, they're like, the biggest difference in my taxes comes from the properties you made me buy with you, or you had me buy with you. We didn't make anybody do anything.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, okay. So you started out with short-term rentals, kind of got forced into midterm rentals, and then you started arbitraging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd say that was the biggest thing when we met. That's what you were telling me about. Um, so when, let's say you have a client or a landlord that's asking you to arbitrage for them, and then they see that this works on this property and they want you to take on more. Do you just say, yeah, we'll go ahead and take on more, or do you have some process to look at that property and go, this one would work or this one won't work? Is that
So in the beginning, we were taking any opportunity we could. We were structuring things like heavily not in our favor just because we didn't know any better. And now, after several years of experience, we've kind of dialed in our partnership style. So that might be a good thing we kind of dive into, is kind of the different structures of partnerships we have, because we got some creative JV situations. But initially when we started arbitraging, we were just straight up, we're your long-term tenant and we'll furnish everything and we'll start running it. And the biggest thing there was furnishing put us in the hole. And even though we had additional properties, it probably took us like 2 or 3 years break even, and we just to pay off the furniture on all those initial properties. And we learned a huge lesson doing that. So we ran the properties pretty much break even for 2 years from arbitrage, but we did amass all this furniture. So we did have an asset, just not the property. The furnishing in the midterm rental space and short-term rental space is really a big part of it. And then, once we kind of figure that out, more people will start to, reach out to us and want to partner and get in the midterm rental game or the short-term rental game. And we kind of evolved how we did that. So now we're saying, okay, the management is one aspect. The setting up is another aspect. And then now you are paying for your furniture in your properties because you're going to get a higher percent of cash flow. So we went from arbitrage to co-hosting, which also helped our burden. So it's arbitrage in the slow months. We were like eating rents. So the slow months are basically end of December, January, February for a lot of markets in short-term rental space. And if you're not squirreling away money the rest of the year, you're basically eating the mortgage payments and the utilities during those months. And so we shifted to co-hosting, where we would take 15% of gross. They're paying us to set it up. They're paying for the furniture, and then they share the liability if we have down month, but they also get the additional highs from the high months. And
mm,
so we have landlords who we started as arbitrage, and then when they gave us more properties, we're like, no, we're going to co-host these, and they were like totally fine with that. And instead of paying for the furniture, we were like, we can split the furniture. If you have furniture in storage, we can kind of move it in. And so really, when we partner, we try to figure out what the other person has or what they need, and then how we can assist that, if at all.
okay. So for someone who has heard all the hype about short-term rentals and is maybe thinking of jumping into it, do you recommend they start with co-hosting or arbitrage, or do they need to get their own to experience it?
It is, it depends on your goals. So, and what you have. Short-term rentals and mid-term rentals and furnishing and all of that and arbitrage is a very active form of real estate. If you have another W-2, or if you don't have a flexible schedule, um, or if you just don't, your hospitality isn't part of who you are, then I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're trying to learn, trying to minimize how much money you're coming out of pocket and kind of learn an industry, it is a good way to get into it without a lot of money out of your own pocket. The issue now versus 2020 is the market has blown up. Kind of everybody knows about short-term rentals now. Mid-term rentals are picking up, and a lot of places it's super saturated, and there's a lot of regulation coming out. And with where the economy is, people aren't spending as much on Airbnb, and so even though the demand is growing, the supply has grown faster because a lot of investors think, oh, I can just slap on an Airbnb and start cash flowing, not realizing it does take a lot of knowledge and to understand what you want in the short-term rental space. However, in the mid-term rental space, it can be a lot more localized. So, here in Birmingham, um, people want midterm rentals in the areas that they're going to be. So if you're an insurance booking, for example, you don't want to be downtown where all the short-term rentals are. You want to be in your neighborhood while your house is being worked on. You want to be able to house your dog. You want to be able to carpool the same distance to school as you normally would. You don't want to have to go all the way downtown and come out back to your school and then go back downtown to work or work from home. And so that's why another thing I like about the midterm rental space is, you can have hyper locality and not compete in your immediate neighborhood and be successful. Whereas like, across Atlanta, there's probably Airbnbs and midterm rentals everywhere, but still missing some pockets of individual neighborhoods where people want to stay.
Gotcha. Okay, so how do you choose a property for a midterm rental?
It's a great question. So our target demographic for midterm rental is they mostly want 1 and 2 bedrooms. So it's usually individual traveling professionals, or maybe a couple traveling professional where one of them travels and the other one is retired or can work from anywhere and travels with them. So our biggest demand is smaller units. Once you get over, 3 bedrooms is probably undesirable as a midterm rental, except for insurance bookings. And then the trade-off you get with insurance bookings is you get a higher payout, but much more vacancy. So it's hard to find those. You kind of just stumble into insurance bookings. It's hard to get those regularly. Whereas traveling professionals are always traveling. So basically, if it's over 3 bedrooms, we would prefer to do a short-term rental if it can support it. And then recently, we've been doing a lot of rent by the room midterm rentals because our overall shift is towards affordable housing. And if somebody needs to go somewhere and travel professionally, they don't want to stay in a hotel, but they also can't afford a whole Airbnb by themselves. And so they're more than happy to rent a room in a house, especially since a lot of our traveling professionals are gone 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and they're really just crashing at the house at night and then going back to work. And that's their main concern is affordability, having a comfortable place to stay, and then being close to their work.
Gotcha. Okay, I hadn't considered even doing by the room.
I can give you an example. So
Sure.
we mentor this couple. They're good friends of ours. But they were living 65 miles from Birmingham and then commuting. The husband was commuting every day to Birmingham to work. And so that was an hour and 20 minutes in the car every day, not working, just driving. And we were like, you guys got to get to Birmingham. You're in a small town. So one, the people there don't have the same mindset as you. You guys are very growth oriented and, more progressive. You need to be around people who will push the way you think. And you're not going to get that in a small town. Two, you're spending so much money on gas and so much of your life in the car. You should be closer to work. And selfishly, it's closer to us too because they're friends of ours. So I found this duplex. here in Birmingham. It's really hard to find good multifamily here in Birmingham, but I found this duplex which is adjacent to Mountain Brook in Irondale, and Mountain Brook is the most expensive zip code in the entire state. That's where a lot of the old money is, and this duplex is adjacent to it. And this duplex is an 11-7 duplex, the biggest duplex I've ever seen. So one
Jeez.
side they have 7 bedrooms, and the other side they have 4 bedrooms. So they're house hacking by living in the 4 bedroom side, and they're renting out the 7 bedroom side. It's actually 6 bedrooms that they're renting out, and one is an additional common space that they turned it into. And um, they kind of did it as they got the rooms ready. They didn't have the money to kind of get everything ready all at once. So they had 2 rooms ready, then they had 4 rooms ready, and they ran 4 rooms for a really long time. And then now they just got 6 rooms ready for the past couple of months. And while they had 4 rooms booked, they were bringing in around $4,500 a month from rent by the room in those 4 bedrooms. At full capacity with 6 bedrooms, they still have a waiting list, and they're bringing in close to 6K per month, if not higher, and living for free on the
Oh,
other side. And their mortgage is probably 3,400, and then utilities conservatively like 500. So they're conservatively bringing in $1,000 to $2,000 cash flow and living for free.
okay, so you found the duplex and had your friends move in and they're renting out the side?
Yeah. So the
Okay.
first question they asked us is, why aren't you guys buying this? I was like, it is a great deal for us. It is life changing for you. You're going to get out of your small town. You get your first investment property. You get to house hack. You get to be close to your work. You get to spend, an extra hour and a half with your wife every day. You need to buy this. So I gave them the property. I gave them the lender. I gave them the realtor. And I was like, go buy this. And they didn't understand at the time. They were like, kind of scared getting into their first property. But now they're like, this has changed our whole life.
Wow. Okay. See, I didn't even think you could find duplexes that big.
You can't. So there's only a few, and this one I found, it was actually a Muslim family that lived there, and they grew up their whole life there. So like our translator was one of the younger sons, and he had lived there for like 35 years. And that's why they had so many rooms, just because they lived on both sides, like their whole extended family
Oh,
all live in
wow.
the same place. So it works really well for minorities as a big house, but on the market, very few people need that size of house. And so it was actually perfect for midterm rental by the room, because it's close to downtown, close to everything, close to shops, in a really safe neighborhood. The only thing they're missing is school systems, which if you're midterm renting, you don't care about school systems. So it was a really good deal too. I think they only paid $375 for it, for 5,400 square feet.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye out because I'm open to house hacking. Our next house has got to be 4 bedrooms since we got third kid on the way.
Yeah. The other thing is, if you get a good deal on a single family home, so with TD, that's what we're about to do. We're buying a property in Hoover, which is where I grew up. Probably an equivalent neighborhood would be like Alpharetta. It's like a high end suburb, and 7A, like good at football. Um, Lots of diversity. I didn't realize how diverse my school was until I left my school. But I knew all kinds of Asian people. I didn't know just like one Korean guy, but we had all the Asians, we had all the brown people, we had all the kinds of Hispanics and Latin folk, and so it's a really cool draw to be around that. But this is a 5 bedroom house, and again, it's hard to find rentals in the 5 bedroom house. The rents don't scale as your house gets bigger necessarily, except if you do rent by the room. So there's no short-term rentals allowed, so everything will be 30 days or longer, and then each room will rent from anywhere from $800 a room to $1,100 a room, depending on, you have a private bathroom, you have your own parking spot or whatnot.
Gotcha. And that's
And
five
we're also
bedroom?
inheriting a 2.65% interest rate.
Oh, nice. So how'd you find that one? I'm curious.
So networking. One thing I do here in Alabama is whenever I see somebody in sub 2 join and they're in Alabama, I reach out. I'm like, hey, I'm TJ. I'm here. and back before I became a leader in the area, I was like, hey, let's network. How can I help you? What are you looking for? And so one of them, Thomas, he's one of my private money lenders. We've done a bunch of deals together. He does mostly multifamily, but he has lots of connections in real estate around the city. He's a business owner, all kinds of things. But whenever anybody messages him about something single family, he's like, it's not what I do. You go talk to TJ. So it was a referral to an agent was referred to me. She was like, my seller needs to sell. We actually have a couple other sub two offers on the table. And so I was like, okay, well, let me see what I can do with my sub two offer. And my sub two offer wasn't as good as the other ones. So, you know, again, being service first, I was like, these other offers are better. You should take one of those. Make sure you ask them about the due on sale. Make sure you ask how they plan on handling the insurance. Ask how they plan on making payments, and like what you do if they default, and all of this. And if all of those are satisfactory, and I kind of told her what to look for, move forward on the deal. And she's like, oh my god, thank you so much. And so she tried to move forward with somebody else, and they actually ended up ghosting her. She called me back. She's like, hey, are you still interested in this deal? And I said, yeah. What happened to the other guy? She's like, they ghosted me. We have another offer that's still better than yours, but I want to work with you because you've been so transparent and honest and so helpful. And she is taking our offer, which is going to be less than the other offer she's still on the table, because all I did was try to help her at the beginning.
Okay. See, I'm I'm trying to think because, like I told you at the beginning of this, I'm trying to build my own little buying business, um, and I keep getting stuck on like I'm getting some potential deals in, and then I try and underwrite them, and I get done with the underwriting. I'm like, I don't know if this is right. So I'm curious, how do you underwrite your deals with a subject
Mm-hmm.
to or whatever, or do you
Yeah,
have someone else do that?
I underwrite my own. So I underwrite it as a co-living rent by the room, and there's sites like roomies.com where you can go see where people are looking to be roommates. And so as a co-living property, this 5 bedroom, I looked at it and it was people were wanting to be in Hoover to rent a room anywhere from $800 to $1,100 a month. So that's kind of how I underwrote it. Uh, Conservatively, $800 per room across the house, so $4,000 conservatively for co-living. Midterm by the room could bring in a little bit more, but you might have a little bit more vacancy while you fill them up. Um, and then you're also trading off, a little less certainty because you're constantly trying to be filling and refilling it. So I did that underwriting. We looked at it as a veteran home, a veteran group home in the area, and it was going to make less as that than the others. Short term was not allowed. Long term didn't make sense. And so I presented all of those numbers, including where I went to look for all of my rent numbers. So basically, when I furnished finder for midterm as a whole unit, went to roomies.com for co-living individual units, and then kind of use my experience with these other rent by the room properties to say, hey, this is not as good of area as this house, and this was making this. So let's undercut this other property by 80%, and then use that number for this property as a midterm rental by the room. And then, that's the conservative number and you have some upside. And I let them make that decision. I'm not pushing them either way. I'm saying these are the best options I think would work for you. And at the end of the day, I let them make the decision and then we're going to run it, whatever, however you guys want us to run it.
Gotcha. Okay. So for co-living, mainly co-living, because or maybe it's this way for midterm rentals as well. Are there any like legal things you have to do to rent out as co-living or midterm rental? Like, do you have to get permits or approval from anybody?
Depends on the city and the state. I know some jurisdictions have the number of people, have a limit on the number of people who can live together in a house, but it's rarely enforced. The reason they have that in Auburn, which is a college town, is to protect certain neighborhoods for families and not have students move in there. But in other cities where it's not like a college town, there's not like a specific reason they have that in place. They may or may not have regulations around it, but usually there's not really anybody to enforce it either. So as long as your tenants are being good and they're just minding their own business, like it's not drawing attention. And at the end of the day, we're providing an affordable housing option in a nicer neighborhood, and there's not enough of those anywhere in the country.
Gotcha. Um, so you mentioned the veteran housing. I know that's a newer thing for you. Can you kind of tell people who have no idea what you're talking about what that is?
Sure. So actually, one of the first educations and conferences we went to before we got into Airbnb, before we started building our portfolio, was a conference up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was hosted by Brian Hamrick, and he runs the Rental Property Owners Association podcast out of Grand Rapids. And we saw this guy there who's talking about group homes and how much impact you can make, and how a lot of the money was guaranteed by the government. And he talked about group homes in general. So, like, for intellectually disabled people, like for blind people, for um, different vulnerable groups, and some of those need licensing, some of those don't. And so we've always been attracted to doing good, and we're like, oh, you can do good and make good money there. My wife and I both being former teachers, that's really important to us, and that's another reason we're shifting away from Airbnb and midterm rentals. And those are decent, they make good money, but they take up a lot of time, and you don't feel as good as you do giving back to the community. And then the other aspect of that is they have to be in pretty good locations. Whereas group homes, a lot of the people were keeping off the streets with veterans group housing. They want to live somewhere they feel comfortable, and they don't feel comfortable in Class A neighborhoods necessarily. They want to feel like they're in a working class neighborhood because that's where they grew up, or that's where you know they want to be. And so it opened up a lot of other properties for us. So a lot of deals that are coming our way that didn't make sense to put a midterm rental there or short-term rental there. Group homes would be perfect there. But in general, a group home is how we do it: rent by the room, all utilities included, and we work directly with government agencies or nonprofits to find people and house people with different needs. So kind of co-living with a specific niche of who we're targeting.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Okay. So you get a property come across your desk. Is there anything about the property that would stand out that says, "Oh, this would be great for veteran co-living," or do you go searching for those specifically? How do you find those
I'm not
types?
searching for anything specifically currently. I just let things come to me, and I look at it through the lens of who would want to live there and who would be excited to live there. And so if a property is super nice and it could be midterm or short term, that's what we're going to do first. Typically with group homes, if it's in a Class C neighborhood or long term rents are kind of low, that's a good candidate for group homes, because renting by the room, you're getting a higher than long term rental rate, and you're treating the single family like a multifamily. So if you don't have full occupancy, you're still bringing money in, whereas a long term rent, you're either making money on the property or you're not. So you kind of ramp it up and build your cash flow slowly that way, and kind of mitigate the risks of being all in or all out. But that's the
Gotcha.
main consideration: is what class neighborhood is it? Is it in? Is it a working class neighborhood, or is it um, higher end?
Okay. So I know you said one of those was a referral from an agent. They needed help selling it. Is that kind of how your deals come across? Do you buy deals from wholesalers?
It's been mostly DTA, and mostly referrals. So that one was the agent. One of the group homes we had was another sub two student, and he got caught up in the whole wrap scandal where a company was built to sell a bunch of wraps, and then the person who was in charge of selling the wraps disappeared, and so all these investors got stuck with the property. So we actually got two of them that way. One of them is somebody we worked with before. We were doing midterm rental on a house in an area we didn't. We were like, I don't know if this is gonna work as a midterm rental, and it did. It definitely worked as a midterm rental, but again, we think it's gonna be better as a group home, so we're actually in the process of converting that over. He had another house that was in a much nicer area, and we're like, the only way this makes sense is to do midterm rental, like a higher end one where you're actually looking for insurance people, because it is so much nicer. And then another one, this guy was trying to sell it to us. He was like, we were trying to wrap it, we couldn't sell it, and I just want to get rid of it. He's like, you can have the mortgage. All I want you to do is pay closing costs, and then I have 35K sunk into it, and you can pay me that however you want. He's like, you can pay me in a balloon, you can pay me $50 a month. Like, I don't even care. I just need to get out from under this property. And then he was like, well, what do you guys plan on doing with it? And we were like, well, we're gonna furnish it. We're gonna rent it by the room. We're gonna house homeless veterans or unhoused veterans. And he was like, oh, that sounds great. I think that'd be great for you. And then he went to bed for the night. And the next morning, I woke up to text. He was like, I've been thinking about this all night, and I love what you guys are doing, and I want to stay in the deal now. And so I'm gonna actually leave all my capital in, and I'll give you guys 50% equity to take over the mortgage and furnish it and run it, which is what we would do with the property anyways. And so basically, no money down, we were able to get into a property, 50% equity, and have another unit where we can provide a useful service to the community and
Wow.
help him get out of his issue where he's eating all the cost of this property by himself.
Yeah. Man, that's amazing. And that's just, and I'm saying this more towards the audience because like I've heard you talk to people. I've been around you a little bit. Um, I wouldn't say I know you as well as I probably should, but that's neither here nor there. But guys, I can tell you that like TJ's dead serious when he's talking about a heart of service. Like this guy has given so much to not just me but other people in our community. It's insane. So, and that's all this is. Like these opportunities come up because you're so willing to give.
Absolutely. I can give you an example in the STR space where I was trying to give, and came back around, and we're 50% owners of a new Airbnb, or about to be. So with TD, we networked. Joseph kind of referred him to me. He was like, I rode down to squat it with Corey. I saw you in action at Golden Ticket, and I've been meaning to connect with you. So he reached out, and we were going to do a 15-minute, get to know each other Zoom. It actually ended up being 2 hours. We just like hit it off. Like we just had such matching energy. And he was like, well, we're looking for STRs. We need the active income. We need the active STR loophole for taxes so we could offset some of his wife's W-2 income. And I'm like, all right, I'm in the short-term space. Let me find your short-term rental. And we had already looked at the Hoover House for the midterm rental, and they didn't accept our offer, so we were looking for Airbnbs, and another Airbnb fell in my lap. It was another guy in Birmingham who has done over 600 flips. He had a show on A&E, and we had connected briefly, and he was like, hey, I know you're into Airbnbs. I know you're into sub 2. I'm liquidating all of my Birmingham stuff and restarting my life in Arizona. He's like, do you want this Airbnb? It's 35K down. It's active and running and making anywhere between $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And it's being mismanaged. He's like, I'm not even running it properly. I'm still making decent money on it. So I was like, oh, this would be perfect for TD. Let me tell him. And TD was like, okay, that's great. Let's buy it. Like, how can we operate it together? And I was like, well, now we're really looking for equity. But I know you're looking for depreciation. So how about you buy the property, you pay me an assignment fee, and then once you've taken all the depreciation you can, you sign a quick claim deed and give us 50% equity later on. Like it doesn't, we're not at a point where we need the depreciation yet. So you take all of it on this property. And then as far as running it, you give us a flat $300 per month until you recoup your initial investment. And then after that, we're 50-50 cash flow partners, and our aspect is going to be running it. And you have taken all the depreciation ahead of time. And then at that point, you've already gotten your money back. And then now we're equal partners.
Nice. I'll definitely have to call TD after this and be like, dude, that's awesome.
We had such a good time. I took him to all of our properties. We visited an RV park I'm trying to buy. Showed him some of our group homes that we're working on. Showed him Birmingham because he had been to Birmingham in the late '90s and it's completely changed since then. And I was like, Birmingham's a top 10 out of state investor market for a reason. Most of our partners we work with in Birmingham that we've grown through Sub 2 are all investing in Birmingham out of state. So we have partners. We have a partner in Colorado. We have a partner in California. We have a potential partner in Washington who's super interested in what we're doing. And then one of our partners uh, is he's like 30 something and travels Asia and works full time from some random country wherever he happens to be.
Wow.
So we got a lot of people putting money in Birmingham. It's super friendly out of state investor market, and we have the local knowledge. And a lot of out of state investors get taken advantage of by wholesalers because Birmingham is very localized. Like you can have a $350,000 house, and then 2 blocks over have a $85,000 house, and then wholesalers will be like, "Look at this comp. It's 0.25 miles away," and then the investor will buy the property way overpriced, and they'll contact a property management company, and they're like, "Okay, we need $2,000 rent for this to make the numbers work." And they're like, "What'd you pay for it?" And they're like, "Oh, it's like 250K. It was a deal. We saw comps at 350K." They're like, "No, your house is worth 85K." And they're
Jeez.
stuck. So we've actually talked with a couple investors who've been in that situation too. And we're like, there's nothing we can do for you. Like, it doesn't matter what we do, you can't get that kind of income from that property. So it does make a big difference who you partner with in a local market.
Man. Wow. Well, that's awesome. I'd never even considered Alabama. I
Yeah,
don't know if
come to
that's just
Birmingham. I'll give you the tour. We'll we'll do the sites. We're actually known as a
all right.
foodie city. We got like lots of bars and entertainment. It's big enough to have everything you want, small enough to where traffic isn't an issue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't
So
like traffic.
I always describe the traffic to fun ratio in Atlanta as like negative there, like so far negative. Birmingham is probably the other end. It's affordable and very little traffic.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's why I live an hour and a half outside of Atlanta, so I don't have to deal with traffic. Um, awesome. Well, TJ, that's pretty much all the questions I can think of off the top of my head. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we move on to the last part of our show?
Nothing I can think of.
Okay, great. Well, then we're going to move on to the last few questions that we ask every time. So first off, what made you want to be on the podcast today?
Man, I've loved working with you, love getting to know you, and it was a cool opportunity for me. So I appreciate you inviting me on. But that's our connection and our networking together is the reason that brought me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And honestly, like I feel like if this episode brings value to you, I will have won because you've already brought so much value to me. So even if I can just get back towards even, that's my goal. Um, so awesome. Now we kind of talked about it beforehand, um, and I'm going to change the question just slightly. I had asked if you knew what your current financial net worth was, and you said you're not opposed to sharing it. You just don't know the number. So, and maybe this isn't the right way to say it. Um, what would you say is your overall net worth? If you just had to estimate a number or estimate a value.
Um, I mean, the properties we have under management are several $1 million. Uh, but the way I measure my net worth is the impact I have on people, and that's why I went to teaching as an engineer. How many people in my community can I help? And I guess part of the way I measure my net worth is how many partners do I have that I am bringing value to? How many people am I helping in my midterm space to provide a comfortable home? How many people am I helping in our group homes stay off the streets? So our impact, and me and my wife are huge on this, is how are we contributing back to the community? Because we're very blessed. Like there's a lot of things we do to have the success we have, and there's a lot of things that just fall on our laps because of our inherent privilege that we did nothing to get. And so I think it's every human's responsibility to use your strengths and benefits and whatever you're good at to give back to the rest of humanity, and in your community who don't necessarily have those same skill sets.
Okay. So then, if that's how you value your net worth, we'll just pick one of those. How many partners do you have right now?
See, we have Jerome, CJ, Brooke, Christina, TD. We had Mark. We have Paul. So probably eight different partners right now. Chris, 9 partners. So probably around 10 to 12. Probably missing
Okay.
some right now. I'm not even thinking of. And that's just active partners we're invested with, not even including the people we serve.
And that was, you started using partners what, over the past year, maybe 2 years?
Yeah, I've only been up to since February 6th, 2023. Kind of hit the ground running. The partners we had prior to that were all arbitrage, and then since then we've just been growing very organically through the relationships and networking within the community. So
There you
yeah,
go.
within the last year and a half.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, then, third question, what would you say your strengths are?
My strengths are definitely teaching and breaking down complex subjects so people can absorb them. And so that was my skills in robotics and engineering. I was able to break that down and teach robotics and coding and engineering to kindergarten through 12th grade and to teachers who weren't engineers. It translates really well to real estate. And then my other, superpower, I believe, is helping people find clarity in how to reach their goals. So a lot of people I see will say, "Hey, this is what you should do in real estate because this is what I did, and I know you can be successful doing it." And I am more kind of zoomed out, and I can see a bigger picture. And I'm like, "No, tell me what you want, what you have available to you. Do you have time? Do you have resources? Do you have connections?" And then I give them a path, or I'll suggest a path that they can take to reach their goals. And so I really like helping people find that clarity. Making sure their action takes them in the direction of where they want to be. A lot of
Right.
people take action and it takes them the opposite direction of where they want to be. Like
Yeah.
me in wholesaling, like I learned so much from wholesaling. It took to a point. It took me to where I wanted to go skill wise. And then after I passed that point, I was getting it was a lot of more diminishing return. And so that's kind of where I'm stepping away from wholesaling as much as possible and then shifting to more partnerships and trying to help people in other ways.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think do you do so you look at the big picture and give people clarity on the path they should walk. Do you go so far as to say, here's what I would recommend, like your next immediate steps are?
Yeah, I
Or
do that. So when I left teaching to do real estate full time, what I thought I would miss the most was the satisfaction of teaching and helping people grow. And the funny thing is, I get so much more of that now than I did teaching middle school. Like it's so hard to get a middle school student to want to learn what you have to give because they have so many other things going on in their lives. Their bodies are changing. They have home like things at home, other students, like all kinds of other crap. Learning is not their top of their list. But when I'm teaching adults who want to change their lives, it's so awesome seeing them put it into action. And so one of the things that stepping away from wholesaling is going to allow me to do is to do more individualized coaching. And the universe has been telling me I should be doing it for probably like 6 months to a year now. And then, the past month has been even more so. People are reaching out. It's like, hey, we could reconnect. We connected over a year ago, and I've been following you on social media, and I want you to mentor me. It's like, so tell me what that costs. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to figure that out because I wasn't actively seeking that out. But if that's what you need and you want my help and you appreciate my opinion, I'm more than happy to help personalize kind of a path for you to get you where you want to be.
gotcha. That's funny because I was gonna ask the same thing. It's how much was it? But awesome. Okay. So then on the flip side of that, TJ, what would you say is your biggest weakness?
I'm definitely a creative, definitely a visionary. So the opposite skill set of that, I need an integrator. That's what I'm putting out into the universe to attract right now. I'm looking for a partner to help me grow and handle all these opportunities, and who can put systems in places, and somebody who always dots the i's and crosses the t's, because I'm more like a creative trying to solve problems and grow, and I need somebody to kind of structure give me structure and help guide or help aim me and then manage me.
Mm-hmm.
And, like a systems person, like Pace has Cody, I need me a Cody. I need me a Molly, and that's the personality I need in my business right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a lot of people. A lot of people need that. All right. And then lastly, what do you need help with that is going to make you money in the next 30 days?
Always looking for capital. So I have 2 RV deals I'm working on where we need some capital, with crazy value add opportunity. So one RV park I'm trying to buy has a 270K net profit, net income, and from last year, and they're on pace to beat that this year. And there's room for growth to even improve that. And then another RV park I'm looking at, it's 41 lots, and it is completely full. And so there's space to add 19 more. So we're trying to buy that. But whoever brings us the capital on that is pulling out 100% of their capital within 5 years, and then having a cash flowing asset forever. And then again, the the integrator piece. If I can find a good integrator, to handle all the opportunities I have right now, like, we're going to be able to grow even faster.
All right. So, guys, if that's you, if you got capital and you want to invest in RV parks, reach out to TJ. TJ, where can people get in contact with you?
So the social media I use most is at Auburn Ninja. You can also find me at goodpeoplehomebuyers.com. And if they reach out to you, you have my contact. So you're a good person
Absolutely.
to reach me through.
All right. So either hit me up or go follow. Well, I mean, go follow TJ regardless on Instagram. But yeah, if you got capital, want to get in RV parks, reach out to him. Or
Or
if
if you
you're
want
like,
guidance.
yep, guidance, or if you're like, you know what, I know how to do all the technical stuff. I'm just don't want to talk to people. Reach out to him, see if y'all be a good fit. And yeah, that's go do it.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Corey.
Hey man, TJ, I really appreciate you coming on the show. That's all I got for you, man.
Thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna send you to the back and close this thing up. All right, guys, that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I just learned a lot from TJ. I hope you did too. If you didn't, go back to the beginning, watch it again, because you obviously missed something. The whole episode was filled with value. That being said, guys, if you liked it, like and subscribe. Come back next week, see who else we got on, see what you can learn from them, how you can help them, or how they can help you. That being said, until next week, guys, peace be with you. Be safe. Have a wonderful week.